my name's Steve MacKay and welcome to your guitar lesson. I've been fortunate enough to play with some of the biggest names in the music business, but I've also taught as a guitar teacher students who practically don't even know what a guitar is. So if you're one of those people, this is a guitar. It's lovely, isn't it? So anyway, let's get stuck straight into it. If you don't have a guitar, the most important thing is to know what to look for when you do go to buy a guitar. So I'm going to cover a couple of points that I think are important to look for when you go through that process. Firstly, I recommend that you spend as much money as you possibly can because you do get what you pay for. And often people buy the fancy looking guitars when they're not always the best. So what I would suggest is to just get the guitar off the stand or ask for help, pick one out and sit down with it and just feel whether it feels comfortable. You should be able to know, even if you don't play guitar, what feels better. You will have a preference out of one or the other. The other thing to look for is low action. Now make sure you look in the book about what low action is because that can make all the difference to how you learn and can really make it difficult if the action's high. So low action, the guitar has to feel good, and the other thing that you want to know is if the guitar maintains its tuning. So ask for help whenever you go into a guitar store because that's what they're there for, to help you out. The next thing I want to talk about when you do get your guitar is how to hold it and how to sit correctly on the chair because believe it or not, you can get medical conditions from holding the guitar wrong. If your arm's all bent and you can do all sorts of weird stuff to your wrists and whatever. So when you hold the guitar, use the curve. That's what it was made for. Bring it into your body, keep it straight, keep your arms sort of relaxed. Your hand should kind of hover around the sound hole. And you just grip the neck like this, so your thumb is on the back of the neck. Now, if I'm referring to the neck, this is the neck here. The guitar is kind of like a person. You've got a body, a neck, head. These are the tuning keys. This is the bridge. You got the sound hole and the nut. So I'll go through that again quickly. Body, neck, head, tuning keys, nut, bridge, sound hole. Of course, you got the strings. And the top part here, the most important part, is the fretboard. Now, I'll make a lot of references to frets throughout this DVD and throughout the book. So I just want to make sure that we've got that clear what frets actually are. The bars that you see on the guitar are frets themselves, but when you play guitar, you put your finger in between the frets. So you're actually playing right in the middle. So if I was going to say this is the first fret, second fret, third fret, I'd be playing directly in the middle of those frets. The next thing I want to discuss is posture. When you sit on the chair, like on any chair, try and make sure it's got no arms, because if it's got arms, it'll probably scratch or damage your guitar. So try and get a guitar stool or just a stool or any chair that doesn't have arms and sit so that your back's straight. Try not to sort of hunch over the instrument because you'll end up, looking like a hunchback. So try and keep a straight sort of posture. If you're a smaller person, it often might help to sit towards the end of your chair because you really want to maintain this sort of horizontal leg so that the guitar can sit comfortably and you can have it on the right angle. The next thing I want to show you is how to hold the plectrum. The plectrum is also referred to as a pick or thingy or whatever. Generally pick or plectrum. So this is how you hold it. By putting your hand out like you're going to shake someone's hand, bring your index finger in, place the pick on top of your index finger facing out to the left, and then put your thumb just on the top like that. So it should appear like the pick is actually coming out the side of your thumb. And here's another view from underneath. So now you know what a guitar is, you know how to sit, you know what you need to use to play the guitar. So let's move on. Okay, now I want to talk about the names of the strings. As you might have noticed, you've got 6 strings, or you should have 6 strings on your guitar. And I'm just going to go through and name them for you. You've got E, B, G, D, A, and then E again on the thick string down there. So E, B, G, D, A, E. I wouldn't expect you to memorize that pattern because there isn't any pattern to it, basically. So I've come up with like an acronym, a way that you can sort of associate something else with the names of the strings so you never forget them. So I've got Easter, Bunny gets drunk at Easter. So it's a little bit silly, but you won't forget it. Easter Bunny gets drunk at Easter, starting from the thin string. So they're the names of the strings. The next thing we have to talk about is the notes on the guitar. When you look at the neck, you might see all these notes here and think, how am I going to ever memorize each and every one of them? It's going to take a million years to be able to do that. So what I've done, because a lot of students ask me that particular question, how do I learn all the notes? So I've come up with a way. I've been able to pretty much learn it instantly, utilizing what we just learned, Easter Bunny gets drunk at Easter, with the string names, and introducing something called the musical alphabet. The first thing you have to understand is there's only 7 natural notes in music: A, B, C, D, E, F, and G. So obviously there's more notes than that, but that's the basis, the starting point, natural notes. So if we start here, you've got natural notes. The extra parts are often either sharps, which is 1 step forward, we go back to the natural note, or flats, which are 1 step backwards. So it depends what key you're in. It gets kind of complicated like that. So we're going to just eliminate flats for the time being and just concentrate on talking about sharps. So I'm going to explain the 12 notes, including the sharps. So you've got A sharp, B, C, C sharp, D, D sharp, E, F, F sharp, G, and then G sharp. And it just loops around like that. So what you might have noticed is it's basically A, B, C, D, E, F, G, just like what we learnt before, but with sharps pretty much after every single note, except for 2. The 2 notes that don't have sharps are B and E. So remember, there's no B sharp and there's no E sharp. You go directly to the next letter in the musical alphabet. So now that you've learnt that, and you've also learnt the names of the strings, we're going to try and join the 2 bits of information together so that you can help navigate your way around the instrument. So I'm going to pick a string. Easter Bunny gets drunk. So say the D string. I'm going to put my finger on the 1st fret of the D string. That's D sharp. I'm going to move it up 1 more. E, F, F sharp, G, G sharp, A sharp, B, C, C sharp, and then back to D, a whole octave higher. So you might have noticed it's 12 steps from D to D again. That's the 12 notes in music. So what I've done there is just started the musical alphabet from a different point. I've started from D, because I started with the D string. So to make sure that you're traveling on the same page with me, I'm going to start from the A string. So Easter Bunny gets drunk at. So I'll start from here. A sharp, B, C, C sharp, D, and so on and so on. So I just pretty much started from the A string, going through the musical alphabet and working my way up the neck, horizontally from the nut down to the 12th fret. So the top string is starting on E, and it goes through from E, F, F sharp, G. The next one is A sharp, B, C, D, D sharp, E, F, G, G sharp, A sharp, B, C, C sharp, D, E, F, F sharp, and G. And obviously you can go all the way up any way that you like. So hopefully with the knowledge of the string names and what they are and the musical alphabet, and remembering that you're working horizontally from the nut to the 12th fret, you should be able to find every note on the guitar. Now we're going to tune the guitar. If you've got a digital tuner like this, it makes it a lot easier to go through this process. But for those who don't, we're gonna basically tune the guitar manually, and I'm gonna take you through the steps in order for you to do this. So the first thing you have to obviously look at is the tuning keys, because this is what we're going to be turning in order to alter the pitch of the string. If your guitar is strung correctly, then you should be able to turn the tuning key anti-clockwise for the sound to go up, and clockwise for the sound to go down. If your guitar isn't strung correctly, you might have to figure out which way you need to turn it for it to go up and down. So to begin with, we need a reference pitch. Now the reference pitch is on the 5th fret of the low E string. The note is A, and the note that I'm tuning is the open A string. So the reference pitch is the A note on the E string. The note that we're tuning is the A open. So if they're in tune, the sounds should kind of merge together and be one. I'll put the 2nd string A out of tune just to give you an idea of how it sounds. You can really hear like almost like a waver in the sound. So I'm going to turn the tuning key anti-clockwise to bring it up, and now it's back traveling in the same sort of sound. Now to tune the next string, the reference pitch is now the string that we just tuned, because it's in tune, we've established it's in tune, so it becomes the reference pitch for the next string. So we're going to play on the 5th fret of the A string, and the note we're tuning is the open D string. Okay, so that's in tune now, and we move down to play on the 5th fret of the D string, because we're tuning the open G string. Going back to the musical alphabet, you've got open D, D sharp, E, F, F sharp, and then G. We're playing the G note on the D string because the aim is to tune the open G string. Okay, so that's relatively in tune, that's pretty good. So we're going to move on to the next note. So far it's been 5th fret, open, 5th fret, open, 5th fret, open. Now is the only difference, it's 4th fret. Because we're aiming to tune the open B string, so we have to play the B note on the G string. And if you count using the musical alphabet, G, G sharp, A sharp, B. You can see that the B note is actually on the 4th fret, not the 5th fret. So we play the reference pitch, which is the 4th fret of the G string, the B note, against the open B string. All right? Hopefully they're in tune, which they are. So we move on to the final notes that we're tuning. The B string becomes the reference pitch. I'm putting my finger on the 5th fret of the B string, which is actually the E note, and I play that as the reference pitch against the open E string. And they're in tune. So to cut a long story short, 5th fret, open, 5th fret, open, 5th fret, open, 4th fret, open, 5th fret, open. And obviously just make sure that you're turning the right knob, so you're actually turning the note that you're wanting to tune. And that's how you tune the guitar manually. Now we're going to talk about technique fundamentals. Basically there's a set of rules for the left hand and the right hand which I like to talk about. And this is really the core subject of the whole book and DVD, because it's the most important thing to remember when you're practicing. So I can't say enough to really make sure that you understand what I've said and can apply it day to day in your own practice of the guitar. So let's discuss just the left hand for the time being. I really can't say enough to play on your tips, the tips of your fingers. It's really important whenever you play the guitar that you're using that part of your finger and not the flat part of your finger, because it's just bad technique if you do it like that. So tips of fingers, you want your fingers to be always curved as well. So you might notice that I've got a curved kind of look here with my fingers, as opposed to sort of fingers kind of caving in like that and wobbling around, which a lot of students just starting out tend to find happens is because they haven't built up enough strength yet in their hands. So curved fingers, middle of frets is the other thing, to play in between the bars, right in the middle, on the tips and with curved fingers. And I call it, the actual shape of the hand, I call it the claw, because it sort of looks a little bit like a claw. Well, I think so anyway. But you basically put your thumb around about in between the 2nd and the 3rd finger, and the other fingers are sort of in shape, as though you were playing a guitar, but there's obviously no guitar there. Then you just pretty much apply that position onto the guitar. Your thumb has to be placed in the middle of the neck. So it kind of makes sense if you think about it, that if the thumb is up here, your fingers are limited, like in terms of movement. But the further down your thumb goes, the more reach you have with your fingers. So somewhere in the middle I find is often the best place. Okay, now I'm going to go over to the right hand. And remember, if you're left-handed, it's just the reverse. So right hand, remembering how to hold the pick like we discussed earlier. Basically, the most important thing to stress is to stay relaxed with your picking hand and your fretting hand. You don't, as soon as you tense up, it's not going to work. So you have to remain relaxed, and remember to anchor your fingers on the guitar, and then limit the movement to this part, the sort of the joint of the thumb there. What I haven't talked about before is alternate picking. This is pretty much the main thing to worry about at this point, apart from having your hand anchored and remaining relaxed. Alternate picking simply means that when I play down, when I pick, as in the pick goes down on the string, I have to go back up as well. So I can go down, up, and it enables me to play guitar with less effort and more speed. So remember, that's what it's all about. Less effort and more speed, and being articulate at the same time. So just to try and demonstrate, say I was going to pick like that. If I tried to do that just picking down, it's very difficult. So remember, what goes down must come up on the guitar anyway. The next thing I want to talk about is position playing. Now, position playing is a very important thing to know about, because it simplifies the whole process of playing songs, practicing, learning, all of the above. So position playing is, simply put, lining up your fingers on a fret. So first finger, first fret, second finger, second fret, third finger, third fret, fourth finger, fourth fret. On the tips of fingers, middle of frets, and making sure that all your fingers are curved. Now that is first position. If I was to move the whole thing up one fret, that would be second position. Third position, fourth position. If I moved it up to the dot on the fifth fret, that would be fifth position. The general rule is each finger placed on the fret owns that fret. So say if I was in fifth position, which I'm in now, the index finger owns the fifth fret. The second finger owns the sixth fret. The third finger owns the seventh fret. And the fourth finger owns the eighth fret. So it's kind of like a set of rules so that you stay within the frets that you're supposed to, and it enables you to play more efficiently. See, I see some people play guitar and their hands are going all around like this, and they're shifting positions, and it looks fancy but complicated, and they're probably going to 3 times more effort than if you just played in position, kept everything kind of stealth. You want to be low on the guitar, not moving any more than you have to. So that's pretty much the core things with technique fundamentals. So here's an exercise that encapsulates everything that we just spoke about, and I call it the caterpillar. So what we need to do is go to fifth position. So move your hand down so that the first finger on the fifth fret, second, sixth fret, third, seventh fret, fourth, eighth fret. Remembering to keep your hand anchored, and we're alternate picking. I want you to play just the first note on the E string, which is the fifth fret, and you're playing with a down stroke of the plectrum. Then keep that finger down and play with your second finger on the sixth fret of the E string, an upstroke, and then repeat the process, keeping your fingers down. Third finger down on the seventh fret with a downstroke, and then the last finger, which is on the eighth fret, with an upstroke. So keeping that position right where it is, you have to then repeat the process on the string below without taking off any fingers apart from the one that you're actually using to play the notes. So keeping that there, I'm going to play a downstroke with my plectrum, keeping the fingers still on the low E string, then an upstroke, then a downstroke, then an upstroke, and then keep going down and repeat the process. I'm just going to go through it slowly for you. Remembering down pick, up pick, like that. Down, up. Okay, so that's basically the caterpillar. You can go up as well, keeping those fingers where they are. Start playing the string above, just one finger at a time, keeping all your fingers there. The main things that you need to think about when you're practicing this caterpillar is to try and keep each finger almost robotic. You want the same look to be going all the way through. I'll play it a little bit faster so you can see what you need to work up to. Okay, so you can kind of get the idea of where you want it to go. The main reason why you would practice something like this is basically because the tendons in your fingers are not all independent. Like you might notice it's easy to move your index finger, it's kind of easy to move your second finger, but as soon as you start moving your third, this little finger wants to go with it all the time. So an exercise like this is kind of your brain dictating to your fingers what to do instead of the other way around. And in actual fact, it's a self-correcting exercise because you cannot play this unless you have good technique. If you're getting this sort of sound, like kind of clunky sound, it means that you're not doing it correctly. The things to look for mostly are whether you're on the tips of your fingers or not. That is the crucial thing, and also to practice it really slow, like snail pace. It's kind of like anything in the sporting field or anything like that. You master the movement and then you progress on and get further on with it. What you need to do is pretty much practice daily, and again, remember the rules we outlined with the right and left hand to get the cleanest possible sound and to create the smoothest possible movements. So that's the caterpillar. Now I'm going to talk about basic major and basic minor chords. These are chords that utilize the open strings on the guitar. So the first chord that we're going to play is A major. What I'll do is I'm going to explain what each finger does and then play the chord. So you've got the open A string, first finger on the second fret of the D string, second finger on the second fret of the G string, third finger on the second fret of the B string, and then the open E string. And playing it from the A string down, that's A major. The next chord I'm going to show you is called C major. So third finger on the third fret of the A string, second finger on the second fret of the D string, the open G string, first finger on the first fret of the B string, and the open E string, and I'll play that from the C note, which is the third finger on the third fret of the A string. That's C major. The next chord I'm going to show you is D major. So you take the open D string, first finger on the second fret of the G string, third finger on the third fret of the B string, second finger on the second fret of the E string, and you play it from the D string. The next chord I'm going to show you is E major. It starts with the open E string, second finger on the second fret of the A string, third finger on the second fret of the D string, first finger on the first fret of the G string, then open B string, then open E string. And you play all 6 strings. E major. The last chord in the basic chord shapes that I'll show you is G major. So to play G major, second finger on the third fret of the E string, first finger on the second fret of the A string, the open D string, the open G string, then third finger on the third fret of the B string, fourth finger on the third fret of the E string. G major. Okay, Now you might notice that you might have noticed that I missed out on B major and F major. The reason for that is those two chords in particular involve more difficult techniques, which we'll get to a little bit later in the DVD. So now moving on to minor chords. The first minor chord is A minor. So you play the open A string, second finger on the second fret of the D string, third finger on the second fret of the G string, first finger on the first fret of the B string, and then open E string, and play it from the A string. Okay, the next chord I'm going to show you is D minor. So it starts with the open D string, second finger on the second fret of the G string, third finger on the third fret of the B string, first finger on the first fret of the E string, and played from the D string. That's D minor. The last chord of the basic minor shapes I'm going to be showing you is E minor. Now E minor, you take the open E string, put your first finger on the second fret of the A string, second finger on the second fret of the D string, open G string, open B string, open E string, and you play all 6 strings. That's E minor. So you might notice again, I missed out on a few chords in the basic minor shapes. That's because those particular chords require a more advanced technique, which, as I said, we'll get to a bit later. So that's basic chords. To take things further from this point in the DVD, you would have had to have learnt the chord progressions in the book. So assuming that you've done that, let's break down the first chord progression, C major, A minor, E minor, and G, and we'll talk about the transitional movements between each chord, because it's an important thing to cover, as a lot of people play C, say for example, and then they might take their fingers off and then make the shape A minor without even realizing they can do the same thing with only moving one finger instead of trying to recreate the whole entire chord. So, as I said, I'll break down the first chord progression and we'll take it step by step. So, as I said, from C, I'll move my third finger underneath my second finger to form the A minor shape. From the A minor shape, I'm going to move my first finger above my second finger to form the E minor shape, and taking my third finger off at the same time. To form G, I'm moving my second finger onto the third fret of the low E string, my third finger on the third fret of the B string, and my fourth finger on the third fret of the E string in one movement. So the only finger that really remains is the first finger, the rest move. So from E minor to G major. And that's through the whole first chord progression. So I'm going to play it slowly, making those movements. Hopefully you can play along. I'm going to strum each chord 4 times using down strums. And yeah, just so you get the hang of it. So. Let's try another chord progression now, just to cement what we were talking about with the transitional movements. This chord progression goes through E minor, G, D minor, and A minor. Now I'm going to break it down as I did before, so that you can follow what to do with your fingers to get the best and fastest changeovers. So you've got E minor. What I'm going to do is keep my first finger where it is, move my second finger to the third fret of the E string, third finger to the third fret of the B string, fourth finger to the third fret of the E string in one movement. So E minor, then to G major. Now to go to D minor, this is quite a dramatic shift, so you really need to visualize what you're doing, because it can take a little bit of time to change from these two chords if you don't do it correctly. So from G major to D minor, I'm going to remove my fourth finger, move my second finger to the second fret of the G string, and move my first finger to the first fret of the E string, but I'm going to do it in one movement. So from there to there. And as you can see, what I did the second time is I kept my third finger down. That's the only finger that you can keep down from going from these two chords, from G major to D minor. I kept my third finger there the whole time. Now from D minor, I have to go to A minor. So what I'll be doing here is removing all my fingers, but I'll be just moving the first and second fingers basically up a string each. So I'm moving the first finger up one string, second finger up one string, third finger up a string and across a fret. So I'll break it down like I did before. First finger moves to the first fret of the B string, second finger to the second fret of the D string, third finger to the second fret of the G string. But it all happens in one movement, or close to. And then the chord progression starts back at E minor, which is just a matter of taking my third finger off and moving my first finger to the second fret of the A string like this. So I'm going to play through that chord progression slowly with the transitional movements, so hopefully you can play along. Okay, so that's chord transitional movements. Now that we've worked on chord progressions and the transitional movements between chords, I think now it would be a good time to introduce some strumming ideas to get basically what you're playing with the chord progressions sounding a little bit more musical. As you might see in the book, I've made a few diagrams, like a grid of how to count and what parts of the guitar to strum to get something happening, but I'm going to elaborate on a little bit more here in the DVD. First of all, I treat the first three strings when playing strumming chords kind of like a bass drum on a drum kit, and the last three like a snare drum on the drum kit. So to illustrate that a little bit better, think of the beat in We Will Rock You by Queen. You've got the bass, snare, like that. So I kind of think in terms of beats when I'm strumming. So now if I put a chord underneath that, this is what it sounds like. Okay, you can already hear that that's a lot more musical than just playing downstrokes like that. So let's move on to the first diagram that I've written in the book, which is basically 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. So let's try and play it now with a beat. Okay, moving on to the next exercise, I'm going to play it counting and then we'll play along with the beat. So 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. Okay, and then we'll play it with the beat. Okay, the last exercise I have written in the book is in 3 timing. So it's sort of like 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, instead of 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. So it's in more of like a waltz feel, just to try something a little bit different. And it actually uses the first chord progression that you learned. So let's take it from the top. So it'll be 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Let's try it with the beat. Okay, hopefully that's given you a few rhythm ideas to apply to those chord progressions that you've learnt. Now I'm going to talk about bar chords. This is probably the single most difficult thing to overcome as a beginner on the guitar. So I'm going to try and make it as simple as possible. Basically, you have 4 different shapes. You've got E major shape, E minor shape, A major shape, A minor shape. Now what happens though is that you use your first finger to bar across all the strings. So I'll give you a demonstration. Say I play E major, and I'm just playing it like you've learnt but with different fingers. And I move it up 1 fret. And I bar that index finger right across the first fret. It's almost like I'm chopping the end of the guitar off. If I move it up 1 more, it's like I'm chopping that much of the guitar off. And so on and so on. It's a movable shape, which is a great thing on guitar. It means that it's one shape you can move around, all around different areas and get different chords out of it. So using the musical alphabet, here's F. So E, F, F sharp, G, G sharp, A, and so on and so on. So the root note is determined by what note the first finger is under, the very first note that you play. F, F sharp, and so on. Now the other shape that I told you about is the E minor shape. It's basically exactly the same. It's like playing an E minor, moving it up 1 and barring that first finger right across. Now I've got F minor, F sharp minor, G minor, G sharp minor, A minor, and so on and so on. Now if I go on to the other 2 shapes I spoke about, you got the A shape and the A minor shapes. It's just like taking an A, moving it up 1 fret, and shortening the neck with that first finger. That's probably the best way to think of it. Except you ignore the top string, you don't play that. The root note is determined by what note the first finger sits under on the 2nd string down, the A string. So there's A sharp major, B major, C major, C sharp major, D major. And I'll just say now, instead of doing this shape for a bar chord, you can experiment with others. You could use 1 finger and pretty much bar that right across the 3 strings, or you could use your 4th finger. Whatever's most comfortable for you. I actually prefer this shape the most out of all of them, but it's personal preference. The next shape I'm going to talk about is the A minor shape. So there's A minor, move it up 1 fret, and I'm going to bar my first finger right across the first fret. That's become A sharp minor, B minor, C minor, and so on and so on. Okay, just going back a little bit in the DVD when we were playing through the major and minor basic chord shapes, and I missed out a few different shapes saying that they required a more advanced technique. That technique was basically the barring technique that we're talking about now. So let me just fill in the gaps and show you the missing chords to your chord artillery. So we've got B major, F major, B minor, C minor, F minor, and notice how I've got my 2nd finger kind of pushing down as like almost like leverage to get the more strength in that finger. You can do it with your 2nd finger out here, but I find it's because it's loose, I can just use it for a bit of extra push to get that clarity in the sound. So F minor, then G minor. And before I finish up with bar chords, I'll just reiterate a couple of different things about using your thumb, kind of like almost like I would call it a clamping type motion. It's good to do that to get more power with the first finger. And if you do have spare fingers, you can basically heap them onto the other finger to create more pressure. So that's bar chords. Okay, now I'm going to talk about fingerstyle guitar, which basically means playing without a pick on your right hand. There's a couple of basic rules that I find are helpful to keep in mind when playing fingerstyle, and that is the thumb pretty much controls the first 3 strings of the guitar. So they are controlled by the thumb. The next string, the G string, is controlled by the first finger. The B string controlled by the second finger, and the high E string controlled by the third finger. So if you were to play a chord demonstrating this, that's how you play it. Okay, now I'm going to demonstrate a couple of different things you can do with fingerstyle guitar by playing through the progressions you learned earlier on in the book, and playing 2 different versions of the same thing with using different types of fingerstyle playing. So the first one goes like this. And the second one. Okay, now onto the second chord progression. I'm going to do the same type of thing, just 2 different versions of the same chord progression. Okay, now I'm going to play the exact same chord progression, but this time using multiple strings being played at the same time. So this is another good skill to try and learn whilst playing fingerstyle. Okay, here we go. Okay, now for a completely different progression, the third one on the page earlier on in the book. So I'm going to just do the same sort of thing, play through the different patterns, 2 different ways to give you different sort of ideas about what you can do with fingerstyle playing. Okay, for the second exercise. Okay, in the last 2 exercises, I'm going to mix up multiple string playing plus a few rhythmic changes. So it might pay to rewind the DVD and go over this bit a couple of times just to get the hang of it. Okay, here we go. Okay, for the second version. Wasn't that nice? Okay, that pretty much concludes the fingerstyle part of the DVD. So hopefully you found it interesting, and there's a couple of tips in there and a few different exercises that'll keep you busy for a while. So what you could pretty much do if you are imaginative and you know your chords and you've got your chord transitions down, you can pretty much, come up with anything your mind can conjure up, including sort of, something like this. Okay, that concludes the DVD. Hopefully you've picked up a few tips and tricks and have a better understanding of how to play guitar, and if you already play, hopefully you've learned a few things that you didn't already know. Remember, guitar is a very difficult instrument to play, so don't get discouraged if it doesn't happen automatically. Just remember that you get out of it what you put in, and I wish you all the best with it.